I'd like to start this evening's, before we get into it this evening very far, I'd like to, everybody that thinks the government is functioning properly, would you raise your hand? I'd like to know how many people think that. And the answer is none. Okay. Everybody that thinks our educational system is functioning properly, I'd like you to raise your hand. And I don't see any either. And everybody that thinks the government is policing itself effectively, I'd like you to raise your hand. Nobody. And everybody that thinks the government is using fiscal restraint and spending our money wisely, raise your hand. Anybody out there? No. So we're all pretty much in agreement that that eliminates a lot of our differences right up front, and I think we all can agree on those issues. And essentially, when I got involved with the Convention of the States, it goes back to 2013, and I was in Atlanta, and I was at a preparedness expo, and I talked to some folks and was helping them out with a booth up there. And on Sunday afternoon, when the crowd died down, I remember this one woman in particular coming through the auditorium. It was a big crowd, but this one woman stood out, and she was walking through, and she's in her mid-30s, and she had two little girls in each, and she was holding on to them with each one of her arms. And she isn't saying anything to anybody. She isn't going up to any of the booths. She's just taking a step or two and looking around. And she had the gosh awfulest look on her face. Her mouth was wide open. And she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And I watched her, and she stood out, and I watched her go all the way down to the end of the aisle and turned around, and she was coming up the aisle behind us. So I went over to ask her. I said, do you mind if I ask you, why are you here? And she looked at me, and she said, I don't know, but I know that something is wrong. I just don't know what's wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. And I think that it really exemplifies a lot of our citizens' feelings that have been following politics and government in general. And that's what a Convention of States, if I could sum it up in a real short sentence, really stands for. And there's a lot of people. Each one of you have your own individual area of concern, some more than less, some others more than others. And we're all trying to fix it. We're all looking for a way to fix it. And that's what the Convention of States is built around. The fellow that put this together is Michael Farris. And Michael Farris, to kind of give you a little bit of an idea, to put a lot of prejudgments out of the way, he's the head of the Legal Defense Fund for the homeschoolers in the United States. And I personally homeschooled my son for a year and a half, and I can tell you that his education and his support from his organization was superb, 100%. He's involved in good, solid American values, supports American values, Christian values, good education, and homeschoolers across the nation are far exceeding most of the people that are graduating from public schools. And so there's a type of guy that you're talking about that's supporting this and put his backbone behind and put his name on the line here for this. But one of the most interesting things when I started looking at it is that back in the late 70s, he litigated a case when the civil rights legislation was going through. And essentially that has to do with Convention of the States and being able to really be a success when we're all said and done. And that case had to do with whether Congress can change the rules of an individual action, or what Congress was attempting to do was to defer the effective date of the civil rights legislation. And they beat them in court, and they established some real core principles that will be used, I think, successfully as this convention of the states legislation goes through. As you know, in Florida, they've already passed it. It's we did it real quick. It's great. Short period of time. And today, it's in 42 states. We've got 15 active states working on passing it right now, and 25 more states coming on to go ahead and introduce bills. So it's moving fast, and by some projections and expectations, there's some talk that we might even have it done by the end of the year. And that just puts a light step in my walk as I found that out and heard that conference call. What's our core belief? We believe that the government has grown to a size where every part of our individual lives is controlled. Everything is either controlled or attempted to be controlled. Even the names of our sports teams. You can't do anything without them following you down. We believe that, and I personally believe this, that we're not able to stand up for our rights. They've established a system, and they've moved away from us. You go to court, your cases are dismissed for lack of standing. Well, if we don't have standing, who does? How can you bring an action against the United States government? Don't know. That's an imperfect world, to my way of standing. They govern us, but we can't. There's no way to have a redress against them when we feel like our rights have been violated. We believe that it's better to make policy and laws at the state level, where you can really reach out and be with your legislators, instead of up in Washington, D.C., and the only ones that they really see most of the time is the people that are lobbying up there. And they've got their own culture up there. What's good for one area of the country, well, that may not be good for the other part of the country. What somebody believes in one part of the country, like if you go to San Francisco, that may not necessarily fly here. And their beliefs and our beliefs may not necessarily fly out there. How can you have a federal government have laws that affect both of us? It's beyond comprehension. So we believe that the convention can best be called by the efforts of individuals at the grassroots level. And we've passed it here in the state of Florida, and we're going to talk more about that a little bit later here. And hopefully ask you all to come aboard, if you already haven't, and assist in the efforts to push it through the rest of the states that we need in the Union. Time is not on our side to get this done. We believe that the other side is chipping away at our liberties and our freedoms. Slowly and surely. They don't care about image anymore. They just go do it. They're bold. They're in our face. And they're moving ahead. And so what? Well, that's not the way things work here. And we've got time, a short period of window of time to get this done, but we do have time to put an end to that type of behavior. There's an interesting comment that I wanted to read to you this evening. The best way to take control over a people and control them utterly is to take a little of their freedom at a time, to erode their rights by 1,000 tiny, almost imperceptible reductions. In this way, the people will not see those rights and freedoms being removed until past the point at which the changes cannot be reversed. And you know who uttered that comment? Adolf Hitler. And he controlled a whole country with 5% in his party, basically. And that could happen here if we're not careful and vigilant, and if we don't act. And that's another reason I got involved in this movement. I'm passionate about our freedom and our country. I grew up in a small town, about 1,500 people. We still celebrate VJ Day. That's victory over Japan. I think we're the only community left in the nation that does that. But that happens there. When I was in Joplin, I'm originally moved here from Joplin, Missouri. We had a similar situation in Joplin with our city council. The people knew something was wrong. It was in the air. It was thick. You could feel it, just like you can feel it with our country right now. And one night, there was 3 of us at a dinner, and we started a recall petition. And in Joplin, you could recall. And on a total budget of $350, we got over 14,000 signatures. We never ever said one bad word about anybody. When I got involved with that, I said, I'll tell you what, one of my clients at the time was the head of the Republican Party for the state of Missouri, and I audited a couple banks in the area, so I had to be pretty careful about what I did and how I did it. And so I said, I'll tell you what, we'll circulate this petition, I'll be part of it, but we're not, if somebody asks us why we're circulating this, tell them if you don't have a reason to sign it, don't. And all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, that caught fire. They found out we were serious about what we were about to do, trying to do. And I can tell you, before the vote, 5 out of 9 people walked off the city council in Joplin, Missouri. And I believe the same thing will happen here in the United States. I don't believe any of the participants will leave office. That's not the goal of the Convention of the States. The goal of the Convention of the States is simply to change the structure. Our rights have been eroded, and we believe, and I believe that our rights have been eroded because they've changed the definition of words. It's like who in this room would believe, honestly, that unemployment is 5.6%? When I was coming up here tonight, on the radio they were talking about, well, if you work over 30 hours a week, you're considered a full-time employee. So you're employed, and that counts towards our unemployment rates. No, it's not 5.6%. They changed the definition. It's like, okay, what's the definition of made in America? You can't buy anything made in America and really believe that it's made in America. I believe it's 10%. If it's assembled, 10% of it, then you can put the stamp of approval on it. Well, what's that? That's a fraud on us. That's a deception. Same as the unemployment rate. That dog just doesn't hunt. And everybody understands that from here. That doesn't compute. So how did we get in this mess? If I go back on the history a little bit, and I want to talk about that for a second. And this mess started, I think, in 1863. The Banking Act was run through Congress during the Civil War, right in the middle of the Civil War. And so the North established the banks that later led to the formation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. But what happened right before the formation of the Federal Reserve in 1913? They changed the 17th Amendment. They said, okay, Mr. Senator, you don't have to be elected by the state legislators anymore. We're going to turn that into a vote of the people. And immediately they followed that with the Federal Reserve, which is all about money. There's a person that adamantly opposes the Convention of the States. I listened to her. I listened to her not once, but I listened to her 5 times. And she's a passionate lady. She's a little lady, but boy, she's passionate and she speaks eloquently. And I think, and if I get her name correctly, her name is pronounced Pubis Huda. Spoke at the Tea Party down in the villages down in the south, in the central part of the state here. Passionate lady. And she said, what's wrong is we sold out. Well, we did. What did we sell out for? Money. Money. And the federal government comes in, or the state government comes in, and they say, hey, we're going to give your organization or your community or whatever, your state, if it's the federal government, your state or whatever, so much money. And they buy their presence, and they buy their influence, and they use that to justify taking away our rights a little bit at a time as they bring their influence and their rule of law down on us. All outside the Constitution. All outside what we thought was going to happen. There's people that have talked about the Convention of States being a runaway convention here. They're afraid that somebody's going to come in and bribe the participants. Money. Well, that could be. I don't think so. Right now, we've got more Republican state legislators than we've had since what, the early 20s, in the 20s, early part of the century. We've got a House and a Senate that's Republican. Some of you may disagree with some of their politics, but they're still Republican. The president doesn't have anything to do with this movement. The Congress can, the United States Congress can appoint delegates to the convention. There's a group of states. They form the Federation of, and I'm going to get this name wrong, but it's a group of states, conservative states that have already got together. They're drafting all the rules and that the convention will follow once it's formed. And we're hoping that this legislation moves ahead rather quickly. Why do I personally believe that? If you follow the news, and it isn't in the news, there's a consortium of countries called BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They got together and they decided that we were such a threat, our money system was such a threat. Our money system that's used to buy us was such a threat to them that they laid a cable among the 5 countries so they could communicate without having to be interfered with or be tapped into. Right after the World Cup in Brazil this summer, what happened the week after? Well, we were inundated with all kinds of news coverage of all these illegal kids coming over the border, unstoppable flow. What was happening down in South America? 177 countries was down there. We weren't invited. They put together a new world currency. They put together a new world bank. They funded them. The currency is supposed to be metals backed, as I understand it, and it's supposed to be going into effect January the 1st. This year. And you can look it up. It's there. They're all standing there with their hands together. Well, how does that affect us? Well, that affects our currencies. So what happens? What happens if our currency falters? We're dependent. We used to be on the gold system. Nixon. Pardon?
Our dollar drops.
Nixon took us off the gold system. What did he replace it with? Well, he had a pretty good alternative. He went over to the Arab countries, said, hey, guess what? We're the United States of America. We have a great Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, and we're going to come over here and we're going to help you develop all your oil, and we're going to make you rich. And you know what? We'll even guarantee your family's continuation and governance of this country. We'll guarantee your safety. Guarantee your safety. All you've got to do is agree to have all the oil that you sell to the whole world traded in dollars. Pretty brilliant. So all the countries, in order to be able to buy and sell oil, they had to have U.S. treasuries. That's why we're the world's reserve currency. That's how that all came about. Well, we're not guaranteeing anybody's safety over there anymore. On November the 1st, last year, Saudi Arabia announced, hey, we're going to trade half our oil in non-dollar denominations. Non-dollar denominations. That's non-petrol dollars. That is a direct attack on the dollar. The Federal Reserve, well, part of our currency is based upon the fact that we, as you all know, we're borrowing our money. We're borrowing at a rate faster than it's coming in. That's the only way we can pay our bills. And in order to be able to pay our bills, we got to borrow more money. Well, people have to show up at the treasury auctions in order to be able to buy those treasuries. The United States Post Office, for years now, has been funding 80 years in advance for their retirement. They're funding people that haven't. They're funding retirement for people they haven't hired. But what was really interesting, about 4 months ago, the Federal Reserve came up and it looked at all our national banks and banking, and all the banks in the United States. And all the banks in the United States are required to keep a certain ratio of treasuries on their books. If they have $100 million in assets, they have to keep maybe 20 or 25 or 30%, whatever the percent, and I don't know the percent exactly, in U.S. treasuries as an investment. Well, the Federal Reserve came up and said, hey, we're going to require you to have more treasuries on your books. So what that make the banks do? That slowed down lending because they had to go buy more treasuries instead of lending money out to businesses, provide capital for growth. But what was really interesting, about a month and a half after that, the Federal Reserve told the banks, hey, we're looking at your municipal bonds. And when we look at those municipal bonds, we see 50 cents on the dollar. So we're only going to allow you, for purposes of all your liquidity, computations, your valuations, your safety net, 50 cents on the dollar when we see those. Well, that caused the banks having to sell all them, and they knew that because they were taking those municipals and turning them into treasuries. That's the state of our treasury auctions. That should alert somebody. Red flag. Something's not right. Not only are things broken, but things are seriously broken. My background is in banking. When I was in Missouri, I had 11 bank clients. I practiced before the Federal Reserve in Washington on three different occasions, and served that bank chain. So I'm worried. I'm really worried. And it gets back to the point about a little time. There's not much time. We don't know. And I don't know what could happen. But I'm seriously concerned, and I'm watching and trying to keep abreast of what's going on. We believe that over a period of time, the pro-government growth faction in our United States government has used legal maneuvering to systematically disassemble the original concepts that our government was founded upon. What? Is that the same as this guy talking back here about systematically, over a period of time, taking away rights and liberties that I previously read? I think I can just look out there and watch it happen day by day, little by little. It's an unstoppable wave. And so what have we got on our side to help us? We don't have a lot of time. And guess what? You can look around this room. There's fewer and fewer of us every day. You know, the young people, the last 60 years of education, it's ruined a lot of kids, a lot of families. They have no idea what this is all about. It wasn't taught. It wasn't ingrained in their hearts, their minds. That country pride, my gosh. It's good times, feel good, do what you want, and expect, if you're, you know, things from the government, handouts. You know, even in our universities and colleges now, they're shaking their head. We got some people going around the world, saying they're sorry for all our abuses. Well, tough luck. You know, that's all I gotta say. You know, if you can do better and better yourself, why not? That's what it's all about. That's what life's all about. That's what freedom's all about. Sometimes, you know, when you get in there, you can use the word tyranny. Tyranny does not respect reason. And how many times have you watched and listened to reasonable arguments being shoved away and people just walking away and things have changed? Tyranny does not care what its image is. Tough luck. I'm just going to do as I want to please. Your rights, well, they don't count here. I'll just do as I have a pen. Tyranny only respects power. And the power is still in the people here, the grassroots. And this is why this thing has to go forward full speed, I believe, to finalize it. We've got some hurdles to overcome as this thing moves forward. The state legislators will probably appoint most of the delegates, but they're the state legislators. They're going to bring the power back to them. I don't see there being a runaway convention, enlarging the power of the government any more than it is. And you know what? When you really get down and just take a broad view of it, the government's grabbing so much power from us right now, there isn't much left to lose. There really, truly isn't. We're in trouble. So we've got to step out and take the steps necessary to stop it, attempt. Because if we don't, there's no defense for not getting up and trying to establish, keep your liberties. Some people, look, a lot of people believe, well, it'll fix itself. It'll fix itself. We'll elect somebody else that'll fix it. There's such a movement that you got unelected people making rules and regulations that people that live by now. You've got Obamacare. That thing is like a virus. The way I understand it, they got committees, and if the committee decides they need another committee, the committee can make a committee and appoint the members to that committee, and it's automatically funded. They can grow amongst them, unbelievable. Well, we will not be able to turn the tide. Things are in place. So I'm here asking you tonight to answer any questions for you, that if you'd consider standing up, and if you haven't signed a petition, go ahead and put your name on a list. I'll add it to you for you, or going to the link on the website of the Panhandle Patriots here and signing the petition. And volunteering, you have to go to the next page. I'll walk you through it if you need to. And what's volunteering all about? Well, that's a lot of work. No. State your piece with your friends, your family, wherever they are in the other states in the Union. Share. Be vocal. Bring it up. That's what a volunteer is. That's all we're asking. That's grassroots level volunteering. You don't have to go on a street corner waving a flag or a sign or spend any money. Got a phone, fax, internet, email, Twitter, whatever, however you communicate, and help this country. Help yourself, help your kids. Because here's what I think is going to happen. What I understand is going to occur. And these are pretty exciting things. It got me going. We're going to redefine the Commerce Clause, and we're not going to have a brand new Constitution, as some have suggested, but we're going to amend the Constitution by going back and redefining the definition of words, like they've been undefined. And that's the crux. We're going to redefine the Commerce Clause. Originally, Congress granted a narrow authority to the United States government, an exclusive power to regulate shipments across state lines. That has grown and been redefined over the years to include all economic activity of the entire nation, in and out of the states. We're going to ratchet that back down. We want to redefine the General Welfare Clause. That originally, that was the federal government could not spend money on any topic within the jurisdiction of a state. The Supreme Court in the 30s slowly eroded away, changed the definition of the General Welfare Clause. Now they can spend it on anything. And they do. And we're going to, that should be reserved for the states. Restrict the ability of judges to redefine the definitions and to rewrite laws from the bench. They run amok. They little by little, they've gained their power, and they've got their customs, and they're going ahead with it. Limit Congress from ratifying international treaties and law that is then used to govern domestic law of the United States, like the United Nations gun ban. If that's ratified in the Senate, then that becomes law here. Well, what happened? How'd that happen? That needs to be changed. That means that ability to do international treaties needs to be restricted. Put a limitation on the use of executive orders. My goodness. Put a limitation on the use of regulations to enact laws. In other words, you just can't have a whole bunch of unelected people running around doing whatever they please. Imposing term limits on Congress.
Yeah.
Imposing term limits on the judiciary. Requiring a sunset provision on all existing and new federal taxes, with a supermajority needed to replace them or amend them. Stop unfunded mandates. Provide access for recall of elected officials. And boy, I'll tell you what, I know that was enough to get me going, because that works. And you don't even have to say, how many people think that some people wouldn't be recalled today and they wouldn't even have to give a reason why? Just sign the petition. That would go, and it would be wildfire.
About some time limits.
That's part of it. So, what's our chances of getting this done? There's 11 democratically controlled state legislatures in the United States today. 31 Republican, and 8 that are split. 31 and 8 is 39. All we need is 38 states to ratify this thing. We're counting Nebraska. They've got one state legislature, their Senate and Congress or legislatures combined. They have one house. So we're counting that as Republican, or fairly conservative out there. Some talk about a runaway convention, fears. Again, all the states are using our bill with the exact same language, and I've put that sample bill on the tables down there. And every state in the union may add, they might have additional clauses, but the crux of the bill that they pass, the body of the bill that they pass, has that exact same language. No deviation. It can't be contested because they all said the same thing. And that legislation, it's for the calling of a convention of the states, limited to proposing amendments, not replacing the Constitution, but proposing limits to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. Limit the power of the jurisdiction of the federal government. Limit the power of where they can go and what they can do. They can't send federal agents down here and go through your home. Or whatever, you know, like they've raided, I think it was Gibson Guitar, wasn't it? They came in there and just destroyed that business. 2 or 3, you know. No, and had no reason to do it. And put term limits on the office of officials and members of Congress. That's just about everybody. Everybody. And those are the 3 things that can be discussed at the convention. That's it. And there's various ways, like I've discussed before, of accomplishing those goals. All to the limit, none to increase. Let the states figure it out from there. And this lady that some of you may know, and I have a tough time with her name, about as bad as mine. Publius Huda. She's an eloquent person, very personable, persuasive presentation. But she jumps around and she's using all the proposed amendments, the applications, and combining them all, and she's grabbing from one to another, another to one, to use to enforce her argument. But she's right about one thing, and I agree, you know, as I said before, the states sometimes sold out. They took the money and they gave away rights. Common Core, don't even go there. So what we're asking, again, is to volunteer. Tell everybody, even if you don't sign up with a website, tell everybody you know. Get on board. I talked to people in Texas today. I've talked to people in Kansas today. I've talked to people in Missouri today. Get on board. Let's get this thing done. Let's push this thing through. Originally, I want to tell you, when I was on the first conference call with the state of Florida here, they said it was going to take 3 years to get this through Florida. I said, if we go 3 years, it won't get it done, ever. And I stated my reasons, and by golly, I like to think that maybe that little pep talk had a little bit to do by putting fire under a few people, and it went on through. It was pushed. Bob Hazard did a wonderful job. He was our state director at that time. And boy, it went fast, didn't it, folks? It sure did. It happened. It was almost over before it started. And that's the mood of the United States people right now. So that's the end of my presentation this evening, and I'll take any questions. I think he's had his hand up first. Yes, sir.
Good evening, and thank you tonight for your presentation. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm a 9/11 survivor, and I've been fighting to save this country since a CIA director was put in the White House in 1988. And my concerns grew greatly at that point because I know who he was, I knew who his father was, and I knew the family lineage. Now, my concerns are this. You have to break down the defenses and weaken those defenses of your adversary. For example, their castle. Because you have to occupy them. on other things so that you can come at them. My point being, nobody's been arrested. Nobody's been held accountable or responsible for crimes. The banking, the mortgage, all these things. Nobody's going to jail. They make $100 billion, they pay $2 billion, and we're told whatever. My point being this. In 1999, an individual by the name of Phil Graham out of Texas collaborated with another criminal by the name of Bill Blythe, a.k.a. Bill Clinton, and removed illegally the Glass-Steagall Act, which promulgated everything that's happened since then with the mortgage fraud, derivatives, and things of that nature. They combined Citibank, Citicorp with Travelers, which was illegal. And that's why behind closed doors, they eliminated Glass-Steagall because they were going to jail. But the point is, it did happen before they removed it. The criminal act has never been addressed. Who and where can we go to as citizens to seek out as a claimant to stand with courage and be that sole claimant to file that lawsuit to go after these individuals so that we start to light fires and do other petitions, because we need a snowball to build as it rolls down the hill. You also need to weaken their defenses, occupy them while we're moving along with our mission that we seek to achieve.
I'll speak to that. I believe this, that if you go back, there's so much to do. And this is a huge task. We can scatter our efforts for individual needs, but the task at hand is so big, and the hurdle is so big to get over. Let's take away and dismantle the entire structure first. And then if there's redress and you feel that strongly about it and you're that passionate about it, I'm sure some of the states, being fully back empowered, would be able to look at that. If you could get a state prosecutor or whatever involved, that's another matter. And I'm not saying there was crimes or not. I'm neutral on that. Want to be neutral on that. Let me be clear. But you said one thing, the education. There's been 60 years of education in our school. I can remember the day when I was in the 8th grade. And our teacher comes in, and we were from a small town, 1,500 people. And boy, we got to give our opinion. It became a little opinionated. And when I was in the 8th grade, Miss Blazek came in, or social science government class, used to be called. She said, "We're going to change the way we're teaching you today." Really? So she got my attention. She said, "So we're going to ask you how you really feel about things. And we're going to want your input about how you feel about this and that. And that's why we're going to start teaching you." And that was the new norm. Well, over a period of 60 years, that's 5 rollovers complete. If you go through 12th grade, 1 to 12, that's 5 complete cycles in high school. Grade school through high school, people have been taught to think and act and make their opinion based upon how they feel. Very little principles, very little, well, what facts do you base that opinion on? Doesn't matter, I feel this way. And you can look at the recent riots in Ferguson. Those folks, they didn't have any principles. They didn't even have any facts. They didn't even believe in what they were doing was right. They knew that kid. And yet, they felt they had the right to burn the city down. Or burn part of it. And that's what's wrong with our schools. And I would hope that we would be able to work on that subject next. But we've got to get some freedoms back, and we got to have the liberty and flexibility to be able to move in that area and go down that area. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I totally agree with Commissioner States, but To me, the most egregious thing going on in our country is called the IRS. That's ultimate power. So why is the convention not addressing that Gestapo-like agency in the 16th Amendment?
What'll happen is that when when the general welfare clause and the commerce clause is redefined, and I was told this, basically our legislators won't even want to run for Congress anymore. We'll have citizen legislators back again, because the powers will be so limited, and that will go right on through the entire the whole system. There won't be some agencies around that we know today, because they won't have the authority to exist. And that's all I want to say about that right now. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear you mention anything about the balanced budget amendment.
Right.
Do you not want to pursue that?
There's another constitutional group that's calling for a constitutional convention. The wording's different, I think, in several of their state applications. But we think that if you call for a balanced budget amendment, that means you can raise taxes to balance the budget. And where's the end? And so our approach will be a little bit different, and we'll not only want a balanced budget, but we'll also work towards restraining expenditures and keeping them under control. Yes, sir. In the red.
To answer your question, past the fair tax bill, the IRS is gone.
Exactly.
So you don't need a constitutional convention
for that. Yeah, and I'm a CPA, and I'm for that.
Okay. Once a state legislature passes, what's it called, a declaration supporting what a convention of states, and then you have elections and get a new legislature in that same state, do they have to go through the same process again?
No, the application and the way that they pass it, the Section 3 calls this is a continuing application in accordance with Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States until legislatures of at least 2/3 of the several states have made application on the same subject. So it's in place, unless it's totally repealed. Yes, ma'am.
What confidence do we have that the amendments we would like to be seen added will be, and it may not totally get out of hand? I mean, there are so many changes that so many people, liberals, would like to see.
Right.
How do we know
first of all,
that these will be what we want?
right. First of all, remember that it's basically the Republican states that's calling this thing. And they will be the majority at the convention.
Republicans give us cover for it.
Now, they're trying, but there's, it's being fought back in a lot of states, and the bottom line is, if we can just get there and redefine the clause, the rules we're hoping will save the day, and that's why the conservative states are already putting together those rules. In fact, this summer, early in July, we're going to have a practice convention in the state of Florida here. Yes, sir. And then I'll get that guy.
I just want to start off by saying I agree with the idea of the movement of an Article 5 Convention of States, because I think it brings good awareness. It brings discussion of things about the Commerce Clause or the General Welfare Clause. The general population has no idea that those clauses were used to undermine a lot of our rights, a lot of state sovereignty. So it's excellent. It brings awareness to the general conscious of the population. But I am concerned that, because you said that it wouldn't just throw away the Constitution and start a new Constitution. However, with the power of an amendment, you can, in fact, that's rewriting the Constitution. An amendment does edit it. So I understand the intention is just to amend, but it can be you could end up with a completely different constitution through amendments.
Well, I ran that argument by in a few nights, lost a few nights sleep over that, and it has to restrict the government. So if you use the Constitutional Convention to restrict the government, pretty soon there won't be anything, which might make a lot of people happy.
One more quick point.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention to the Constitution now.
Right.
So best case scenario, we have a convention of states, we make more good rules.
Yeah.
The Constitution's already pretty darn good. So we make some more good rules.
Right, but
They're not following the good rules we already have. So an Article 5 convention is not a good
absolutely.
We
But
still have to hold people accountable.
we'll have the recall provision, and believe me, that's powerful. That can work.